speaking of Florida, I want to bring in a good friend of mine, great meteorologist from down in Orlando, Florida. Used to do TV for a while, Amy, but now you're kind of out of the business and more of an observer. And yeah, I mean, you guys are just crushing it down there. So Amy, you were telling me, we were texting earlier, you said that Bertha had some indirect effects on Florida, and you were saying that it actually made it more comfortable. I'm curious about this because when I see low pressure to the west of Florida, I'm thinking with the counterclockwise flow that's bringing in air out of the south, wouldn't that make it more uncomfortable?
Right, you'd think, right? And we were actually hoping that we would get the direct impacts here as far as just some rain, because it has been very dry here. Despite the fact that it's summertime in Central Florida, we have not gotten the rain that we really need. So yeah, there's the drought monitor. You can see we've got some extreme areas, some severe areas, some moderate areas, a lot of places that still need rain across not just Central Florida, but North Florida and South Florida as well. So we were hoping for some rain from this, and instead, what happened was, because Bertha formed west of the state, and yes, the circulation from the south came north, there was this little pocket of dry air that was to the south that it kind of tapped into, and that pulled it right up the peninsula of Florida. We also had a little bit of Saharan dust. I'm sure you guys have talked about it. You've heard about all that dust that comes from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean during hurricane season, and it has impacts on us in Florida. So we were dealing with a little bit of that as well. So the combination of the two things just kind of dragged just enough of that dry air in here that it limited our rain, but also, more importantly, dropped our dew points. And, you know, in the summertime in Central Florida, our dew points mid to upper 70s, around 80 even. Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we had 80, which, you know, the weather nerds who are watching know that when you get dew points in the upper 70s to around 80, it is just sweltering, hot, miserable, no fun.
Yeah, it's air you can wear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. We got a little bit of a delay, but I'm looking at the water vapor imagery here. So which pocket of dry air are you talking about? What was the time frame that you're mentioning? Because when I look at this, the thing that always stuck out to me was this big thing of dry air that was coming in on the north side of it. I think that was, along with the wind shear, was kind of playing into why it looked like such a kind of a measly storm. But yeah, I guess you can see some more dry air coming up there early in the week, right?
Yes, it wasn't until it started to pull just a little bit to the west and away from our west coast. Okay. That's where it was. So it was kind of late on Monday, but we really started to feel the lower dew points Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday, and Thursday. We still today at 2 o'clock this afternoon, our dew point was at 68 in Orlando. So yes, if you're in Phoenix, you're thinking that's horrible and it's super humid. But for us in Central Florida in the middle of July, 68 feels a lot more comfortable. Yes, it's still hot. It still hit 95, 96. The sun is still intense, but with less humidity, it's just, you know, the heat index is 100 instead of 110 or 115.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this over the next couple of days. We pulled up the heat index forecast here. And so that dry air kind of still around? Like, are you still feeling the effects of it?
Oh, yes, today, but gradually as we get into the weekend, it's all going to change. The PWatts, I heard you mention the PWatts at the top of the hour. Our precipitable water is headed up. And so, yeah, our heat index, once we get to Sunday, Monday, and into next week, it's going to start moving back up again.
All right, here you go. You said PWatt. I'm going to pull it up. See, I've been trying to like make it such that I can pull up whatever I want in real time. And it's been it's been an arduous process, but we're actually, we're hitting the bullseye here with everything that you're talking about. Yeah, look at that. A lot of moisture comes back into the picture, especially into next week. Back to regular Florida pretty soon. All right.
Yes, and not only the humidity, but also we've got more rain coming back in too. We've had very limited rain, which is why the temperatures climb so much. But also when the rain starts moving back in, hopefully we can get caught back up because we are way behind.
Well, speaking of the rain, I mean, I'm sure you've been following the whole El Nino situation. And as I understand it, you know, obviously with El Nino, it has so many different effects on different parts of the planet, different parts of the country too. And I can't remember who we were talking. I think it was Noah Berggren over at Fox 35 in Orlando. I'm sure you know him. When we have an El Nino going on, like fall and winter tend to be more wet down in Florida. And then do we also get a higher chance for tornadoes?
Yes, depending on when it is. But yes, in like the winter time for sure. And in the spring. But obviously hurricane season, we love El Nino here because it limits our hurricane development.
Yeah, so I actually just found this graphic deep in the archives here. It's a really nice little comparison between La Nina and El Nino years. So, maybe you can go
nice.
through this with me a little bit. And like La Nina, the first thing that you notice, obviously a lot more lines. So these are all like the historical storms that we see during a La Nina year. And then here is El Nino. Now, the one thing I also noticed that really sticks out to me, it's like La Nina, you see a lot more action coming from the MDR, the main development region. And then when you get into an El Nino year, that seems to be, at least in general, a lot quieter. So you've forecasted weather down in Florida during plenty of La Ninas, plenty of El Ninos. What is it typically like for Florida? Where do you see most of your action from? Where are you most worried about? The Gulf, off the southeast coast? Is it MDR? Is it the Caribbean?
Yeah, it depends on the month because they come from all over. We're surrounded by water on three sides. So we get them from the Gulf, we get them from the Atlantic, they come up from the Caribbean. So the thing about El Nino that I do want to point out is all those red lines that you have on that graphic.
Yep.
There are lots of red lines still. It's always important to remember that just because we have fewer hurricanes, it doesn't mean we don't have any. And in fact, we have had significant hurricanes during El Nino years in Central Florida. We had South Florida Hurricane Andrew, of course, in 1992. That was an El Nino year. And then more recently, we've had other landfalls that have been pretty devastating in the state too. And they were also during El Nino years. So we always say, yeah, it's super interesting. There's less storms. We love that. But it only takes one. I know it's a cliche. We say it all the time, but it's so important to remember that obviously we can't let our guard down because it only takes one.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally true. And honestly, I kind of feel like with Bertha, if we didn't have all that wind shear around, one thing I've learned in my career is never sleep on the warm Gulf sea surface temperatures. You can, I'm sure it's like as a meteorologist, you can get really caught up in like, okay, there's a little bit of shear that it's going to run into, or like maybe not quite as much moisture. But at the end of the day, when the sea surface is cooking, these storms can really do some weird things. So yeah, just a couple of analog years here that I have. There have been some pretty significant storms. These are analog years, meaning years in the past that are meteorologically similar to what we're dealing with this year. So it's not perfect. It just kind of gives you an idea that like things can still happen. Okay, last year you went viral because you did the thing that you tell people as a meteorologist not to do ever. You went outside and filmed a tornado as it was going on in your backyard. Let us play the video here real quick, and then we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Oh my God. The roof just came down.
Wow.
And my commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the screen enclosure, which I thought was the roof originally. But then my husband quickly pointed out that, yeah, that's the screen enclosure. But that was on our backyard, and it flipped over the roof of the house and ended up in the front yard. Shockingly, though, as you can see, did not take down that little fence, knocked the chairs over, but it was an EF0. And probably when it was by our house, it was, right there, it was probably more of a downburst than actual twisting tornado. However, quarter of a mile before my house, the neighbors across the street, it was an EF2.
Okay.
And their house is gone, right?
So,
their roof is completely gone and their house is demolished.
Okay, I was surprised that we had like some graphics on this tornado. I looked in the archives here in our database, and I found this one that said EF2. Was this the one, Longwood, Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
So
wow.
it bounces. Our tornadoes here are so different than the ones that you typically think of when you think of Tornado Alley, or you see those giant, like in the movie Twisters, you see those giant things. We don't have those here. We rarely get an F3 or an F2. Usually it's an F0 or an F1. They're very small little spin ups that are rain wrapped, so they're difficult to see, and they just jump down and then they bounce back up in the cloud, and then a little bit later they bounce back down, and then they bounce back up in the cloud. So that's kind of what was happening when you look at this one. It just kind of skipped along that line for several miles and did damage in some spots, and then moved along and did damage in other spots. So obviously we were very fortunate that this was all that happened, but it was still took down a bunch of trees, and there were several houses that were
You know usually what's going on with a situation when there's a tornado going on as a meteorologist, right? You're always in the radar right away. You're like, oh, wow, there's maybe something coming. And you also have seen lots of videos of tornadoes, so you know how quickly it can go from zero to just crazy. Was there any point while you were taking this video that you were like, eek, we're starting to get to the point where I need to get inside, or were you committed to the video?
I would say a little of both. Yes, my first instinct was I need to get video because that's my job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also know where is the safest part of my house. I knew where the tornado was coming from, which direction. So I wasn't going to go out the back of my house because I knew that's where the tornado was coming from.
Important
so
info.
the house was between me. It's brick. I was surrounded by bricks on all sides. So I did feel like I was safe. Sure, things can go wrong. Sure, even trained spotters do get hurt and make poor decisions. But I really felt like in this instance, I was okay. There was one point when the lanai first came over the roof that I sort of backed up a little bit and thought, and my husband was like, he was standing right behind me and he opened the door and he was like, oh, you need to get inside.
Oh, that's
He was
too
more
much.
nervous than I was.
mean, if I'm being completely honest, I am a little bit jealous, and I cannot say that I wouldn't be doing the exact same thing. Of course, making sure my family was inside probably. I'll just show them the video later. But man, that is just some crazy video. I remember when it came out, I'm like, well, that's my friend. Oh my God, she got the video back there. Amy, we got to run to break here in a sec. Thanks a lot for coming on. We'll have you back on again. I'm assembling an army of people from across the nation that we can go to that are experts on their region. And you're just fantastic. Amy Sweezy over there from Florida. We'll see you back here next time.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Ari. Great to see you.